your thoughts. Thanks, Letitia. Just to start off, I'm going to keep my camera off. When I have too many programs running at the same time, my computer doesn't like me so much. So welcome everyone to the Calgary Adapted Hub powered by Jumpstart, our October seminar. We're talking all about hot topics that are happening out in your organizations and communities. I know we've got people from across Alberta today, which is super exciting. But yeah, so this is a bit of an open forum. You're more than welcome to, we can stop chat. We will go through a couple of slides just to give you some more information on what we do at the Calgary Adapted Hub and who we are. And then we'll flip over to the Jamboard and start the conversation. So just to get started, a quick land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that Calgary, Alberta is on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, Aksay, Nakota Nation, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. For those of you who don't know us, there are a small but mighty team of 3. So we have Ashley Fox, who's on the call today. She is the director of the Calgary Adapted Hub, really responsible for the program design and development, all the things to do with fund management and growth and sustainability of our organization. We have Letitia Jansen, who's also on the call. She's our knowledge translation and research coordinator in charge of research and evaluation and the knowledge translation, which is really a valuable piece of what we do at the Calgary Adapted Hub. And myself, I am the program and community engagement coordinator, responsible for partner, community, and stakeholder relationships, and then the lovely stuff we do on the social platforms around management and engagement. So anything you see on the Calgary Adapted Hub social media pages that comes from us is from me. So welcome again from all of us at the Calgary Adapted Hub. We are essentially a not-for-profit that is powered by Jumpstart. We bring together a whole bunch of different organizations across Calgary to really give children and youth the opportunity to have quality physical literacy and sport experiences. These are our partners that are currently with the Calgary Adapted Hub. Some are just joining us. Some of them have been around since the inception of Calgary Adapted Hub in 2020. So we have Mount Royal University, Genesis Center, MNP Community and Sports Center, Vivo for Health with Generations, Sport Calgary, City of Calgary, WinSport, Tsuut'ina, Seven Chiefs, Bakova, University of Calgary, Siksika Health Services, and the YMCA Calgary. So really cool to have all of these great partners on board with us, offering those quality programs for children and youth. So we erect people to the heart. So we'll just go through a quick icebreaker. Again, we have people from across Alberta here, which is great. So I'll just go around the room here. And if you want to say your name, your organization that you're calling in from, and maybe one win that you've had this fall thus far, although it seems like winter, but one thing that's great that's happened in your community, organization, whatnot this fall. So I will start off with our director, Ashley Fox.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks so much everybody for being here today. I think one of the successes so far this fall, and just looking at some of the names of folks joining us today, is really around that continued momentum and growth. And so summer camp and summer programs always tend to be a rich space for learning. And I'm really excited that we've been able to onboard some new partners with Calgary Adapted Hub this fall, and really seeing the shift towards that continued growth and collaboration.
Love that, Ashley. Thanks for sharing. Letitia.
I'm Letitia Jansen. As Jen mentioned, I am the Research and Knowledge Translation Coordinator for the Calgary Adapted Hub. And a win for us with fall here is we onboarded a number of new students, both on the research side, but also on the program side. And we got to relaunch bigger and better the family navigation service that we offer.
Yeah, thanks, Letitia, for sharing that. And for those of you who don't know, we offer a really amazing service that's really unique to the Calgary Adapted Hub. It's a family navigation service where families of children and youth living with disabilities can call one of us or one of our practicum students and get a feel for what they're looking for, and then have that direct relationship between the program and what skill set they're looking to develop, whether that be swimming, fencing, any type of para sport. We actually guide them through the process because, as a lot of us know, recreation sport can be a bit of a daunting process to find exactly what you're looking for. And we have folks who will kind of connect the dots for families, which is really fantastic. So, and you can learn a little bit more about that navigation service on our website if you're ever interested, or you can contact one of us. Alyssa Grimes, you're next up.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Alyssa. I am a PhD student at the University of Calgary. So I'm not necessarily with an organization, but I guess just some good news is Letitia and I are making some way on a national survey to kind of explore the burden of concussion and injury among those who participate in adaptive sports. So that's exciting, and we're hoping to soon get some recruitment underway.
Amazing. Thanks, Alyssa. Brooke Dennett.
Hi, I'm Brooke. I'm a second-year master's student at the University of Calgary. And I guess just to kind of second what Ashley and Letitia were saying, for our program, it's like welcoming new students and new partners in the community as well. So that's really awesome.
Thanks, Brooke. And thanks to our U of C and MRU students who help us so much in the research end of things. Channing.
Hello, my name's Channing. I'm with the town of Vulcan. I guess our success is just the record year we've had for participation in programming. Thanks.
Thanks, Channing. Deanne.
Hi, I'm Deanne with the City of Calgary, a recreation program coordinator here. And I think one of our successes that we've seen this fall is we've really struggled with our postings and our hiring and staffing, attracting quality candidates. And the last couple of recruitments that we've done, we're seeing higher and higher quality of candidates coming in. So that's been very refreshing to see.
Yes, absolutely. Hiring and staffing has been a challenge, I think, across the board. And we'll definitely be talking about that today. Keegan.
Hello, I'm Keegan, and I work for the Lethbridge Sport Council. I guess part of my role as success has been we hosted an all abilities lacrosse programming, which was really successful, and we're going to continue it through the fall and into the new year. So pretty happy about that.
Amazing. Thanks, Keegan. Sarah.
Hi all. So I'm Sarah from the YMCA of Calgary, and yeah, so I think our wins for this, well, I think the YMCA is very proud to be a new partner with Adaptive Hub and the work they are doing. But in addition, so this summer in our day camps, we identified the need for our staff to get more support and more training and guidance in certain areas, one of them being behavior management. So through that work, we are reaching out to new and old organizations and partners, looking for ways to collab and just sort of get up to speed on new research and new data and stuff like that. So that has been a win for me of just collaborating with new and old partners just to get to know more about their organizations and the work that they are doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. I love the collaboration moment. I think one of the great things about Calgary and Alberta in specific is how small sport and recreation is within our spaces, but how great we collaborate with one another. So thanks for sharing that. Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Miller from the City of Spruce Grove, and I'm a community developer here. And I guess the biggest win isn't for me, but it is for the community in the fact that our Ringette Association has just started a new program for people with disabilities. So I'm looking forward to working with them on that.
Oh, amazing. We love that. We absolutely love that. I think we've got everyone. We had some people come and go on that participant list, but I think I've got everyone. If I didn't, just give me a little hands up and I can flip over. But I'm going to just stop sharing this really quick and we'll go take a peek at this Jamboard. So thanks again for sharing some of the hot topics that are happening in your organizations. I know sometimes when we are doing our daily things, staffing and dealing with customers and that kind of thing, it can get a little overwhelming. And this is an opportunity to really talk about those hot topics, but also collaborate with one another. So we have here, I'll just actually share in the chat box again, the link if you want to keep adding to the Jamboard as we go along. But just to quickly review, and then we can go sheet by sheet here, is so for our hot topics today, we're talking about participants with multiple or complex needs, which is, I know, a big one here in Calgary. Funding, the big mountain that all of us deal with in sport and recreation is where the dollars come from and how we utilize them effectively to make sure that they go the farthest they can. Engaging local sport organizations, what does success look like? Value versus strategy, which I'd love to talk about first. We'll come back to that in a second. We have staffing, volunteer recruitment, so that volunteer retention piece. I know a lot of our partners do rely on volunteers, so making sure that we can recruit and retain those volunteers over the long term is really valuable. Hiring specific leaders. I'm assuming this is around inclusion leaders or leaders that with specific backgrounds in working with kiddos with disabilities. Having volunteers from different generations, understanding the different reasons why they volunteer. And then the learning and development. So lack of learning opportunities, those costs of PD opportunities, which I know can get costly, especially if you have lots of staff, how to get staff trained, and then too much training. Feel free again to add anything that you like as we go along. We'll capture this. This meeting is also being recorded, so if you want to come back to it or this Jamboard, you're more than welcome to. So maybe let's start off with, what does success look like? Value versus strategy. For the person who put that down, do you mind elaborating a little bit more about what you mean?
Sure, Jen, it was me, Ashley. I wrote that down because in a lot of conversations we're having, what we notice, I used the term momentum or energy earlier. However, we're also noticing that there's a lot of work being done in more inclusionary spaces around EDIA strategies and other spaces that are looking to be more inclusive. And so I think I think this is a really positive hot topic, because I don't know if we always know what success looks like when we're building those strategies. And when we're looking at accessibility and inclusion from the lens we're talking about today around adapted physical activity, do we know what success looks like or what we're trying to achieve? And is this a set of values that we're looking to work from, or is this a strategy that we're building?
Oh, thanks Ashley for sharing that elaboration. Anyone else finding that the strategy versus value, or how we adequately assess what's happening in our programs and be able to report on those successes? Everyone's doing so good out in their communities. I know, like with our programs too, and our program partners, they have definitely expressed, how do we measure, and we talk about that in sport and recreation a lot, is how do we measure success? What is the tool that we're using? How do we report on the successes? And that, I think, ties into that funding piece. When we're able to really articulate what's happening in our programs and in our communities adequately, then those dollars are tied to that. So yeah, and maybe let's branch off and talk a little bit more about funding. And I know this has come up quite a bit, but anyone dealing with challenges with funding, specifically maybe umbrella funding in terms of getting programs and services off the ground, or maybe a little bit more dialed down into adaptive programming. Anyone experiencing challenges with that funding piece? Oh, we got someone in the chat. Oh, Ashley's just elaborated challenges, or how are you funding adaptive programming? Anyone actually found any really successful adaptive funding pockets or grants that they've applied for to get some of those programming off the ground? Other than Calgary Adapted Hub.
Can we maybe ask if anybody knows how the ringette for individuals with disabilities or programs like the All Abilities Lacrosse are being funded?
Yeah, absolutely. Sylvia, do you want to maybe elaborate on how you got that Ringette partnership off the ground?
Sorry. I can't speak to it fully because it's an association that's doing it. But from what I understand, they're doing it primarily through user fees. And they have had a little bit of sponsorship. I was actually busily looking for a grant that I had them apply for. Just figure out the name of it, but I'll put it in the chat once I do find it. So unfortunately, I can't speak to it fully. I'm sorry about that, but they have been working towards this for a few years, and it's finally just started this year.
Awesome. And do you know if that was, I know you're looking for it feverishly in the background, but was it a provincial grant or a local grant that they were accessing to do that?
I can't recall. I want to say it's provincial, but I will stick it in the chat once I can find it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing and putting me on the spot.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thanks.
I know for us with the lacrosse programming, we use the Return to Play grant. And as moving forward now, it's the challenge of having it be sustainable beyond the grant opportunities and funding. So having programming that's, yes, just sustainable long term, and my position's only contract. So having those champions in those communities. And then we also, our future programming, we're hoping to be funded by the Every Kid Can Play grant that we applied for.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's a really great pocket of money for sure. And now in terms of your role, Keegan, you specifically are tied to this program, it sounds like. Are you funded by a provincial partner or through Lethbridge or?
Yeah, I'm funded through, it was through a provincial grant. I am under two different funding streams. So one is the like Red Cross, and then I can't remember what the other one is, but yeah, through two different grants.
Awesome. Anyone else accessing funding to offer programs or partnerships or leveraging partnerships out in the community? Maybe you're working with a community association or a not-for-profit group that's offering direct delivery sport, like pay to play, or have found any successes or even challenges with that. I know we celebrate a lot of the successes most of the time, but if there's any challenges you want to share? Got a quiet bunch today. Must be eating their sandwiches in the background here. We'll flip over to this other one before we move on to staffing and learning and development. Anyone seeing some, I know with our partners, participants coming with multiple or complex needs is really a challenge or a hot topic that's come up quite a bit. So we have kiddos who might be on the spectrum, but also coming with a co-diagnosis of something else, where we really need to amp up our game in terms of supporting those kiddos to make sure they're successful. Anyone else seeing that out in their communities, fall programming? I know this comes up quite a bit in summer programs as well. Anyone out there have any experience with that?
Yeah, so Sarah from Calgary here. Yeah, so this summer we definitely saw that in our summer camps. So whether the parents were choosing not to disclose any sort of diagnosis or just staff not, experiencing these kids who either overstimulated or just had unique behavior or needs that needed to be addressed that we just weren't qualified or set up for. So that caused a lot of burnout with the staff. And yeah, so that's sort of our goal this year, is to sort of figure out and brainstorm what can we do to help support the staff so that the experience for parents, campers, and staff are all a bit more positive this summer.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Sarah. I know it's one of those things that comes up quite a bit in summer programming is how do we support kiddos in general, but also when we have a high volume of kids coming through our programs, making sure that they're successful. Has anyone had any, maybe we can flip to this next slide here. Anyone had any success or challenges with training their staff? I know the YMCA is looking at collaborating with some different partners out there on providing some training to their staff, but has anyone had any successes or challenges that they want to share?
I can maybe speak to some training. This is Deanne with the City of Calgary. Um, when we talk about seeing high number of participants, I hesitate to say we're seeing more, but I do think we definitely are seeing that our staff don't have the training, the experience, or the comfort working with those children. So we've provided a lot of training, probably more than we ever have in the past, but we're really seeing that we have lost that mentorship. Pre-COVID, you always had that, half your staff would stay session after session or year after year, and 50% was new. And that 50% that have been around a year or two have those skills or have seen those skills to deal with a lot of those behaviors. And we're missing that the last couple of years. We don't have that succession of passing on and just that natural mentorship happening. So we're hoping that that will occur this fall. We've got a high number of our staff returning, and we're seeing that from a bit this summer, more this fall, and we're hoping we're getting back into the swing of that natural mentorship that happens and occurs.
And I'm assuming the break in mentorship is due to COVID.
Yes, yeah, because we started brand new a couple of years ago, all new staff.
Thanks, Deanne. Anyone else struggling with or having challenges with staffing? Just overall. And feel free to raise your hand or add it to the chat if you like.
Not necessarily a challenge per se, but I know at our last programs committee meeting, one of the things that did come up for more than one of our partners was this past summer, they had the opportunity to bring in 2 or more additional staff that just could support kids throughout the day, maybe even bouncing from camp to camp group, but could support when and where kids needed that little bit of extra attention.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Letitia. I know, yeah, in our programs committee meeting, which we had a couple weeks ago, this definitely came up. And for us at Calgary Adapted Hub, it was a big win in that when we have dedicated staff in programs that can offer support one-on-one or even transitional support for kids, they feel more successful and they have a better experience. And I know one of the kind of outcomes of that is in the previous years, many of those groups had said we've had to let kids go day 1, day 2, or multiple kids go because they were really struggling. But with that inclusion leader or that transitional leader in those programs, they were able to have maybe 1 or 2 go home the entire summer, which is a huge win. So some exciting things around that. Anyone else having challenges or successes with staff or staff training, volunteer staff recruitment? Sylvia's put up a couple links in the chat box around adaptive funding. Adaptive sports equipment grants and funding, if you wanted to check those out or make a bookmark of those for later. The good things that come from this meeting, obviously, is the collaboration piece and the sharing. So having volunteers from different generations, understanding the different reasons why they volunteer. Does anybody want to speak to that note on the Jamboard?
So another part of my role is volunteer management. And it was interesting doing my research that people do volunteer for different reasons and kind of targeting different generations, understanding that difference as a way to encourage volunteers. Typically like older generations volunteers, it's kind of been taught to them as giving back to your community, though that responsibility to give back to your community, versus younger generations is a lot more like encouraging them to volunteer because it can be a resume builder, it adds skills for work experience, those kinds of things. So just using that as a way to target different groups.
Love that. Yeah, there's definitely a generational difference. that I've also noticed, I teach high school in another part of my life, and it's definitely different between what motivated me to be involved with an organization, like you were just mentioning, Keegan, about giving back to your community, and that holistic piece versus maybe some of the kids or the youth in the generation now do it for different reasons, are just motivated differently than potentially I was at one point. So anyone experiencing that, or anyone experiencing successes or challenges with recruiting, like kind of outside our normal pool of youth who typically run our programs, maybe accessing folks who are older adults or parents living, at home, or people who work from home, or any newcomers, any groups that are typically not our target audience?
Not that I want to pick on anyone here, but I was wondering, maybe Deanne, is there anything you could speak to? And I know you said for your success, increase quality of staff candidates. Is there anything you could speak to around why that might be?
Did we lose her, I wonder? I know Deanne works in a recreation facility, so I'm sure she got pulled away. Hopefully.
Could I just
go ahead.
chime in? Oh, great.
Yeah.
I was just going to make, I'm just curious when it comes to, I think the point of volunteer recruitment and targeting certain demographics is really important in terms of creating kind of quality training as well after that. So within programs, so it's more from kind of the sport organization and administration side, are you asking your volunteers certain questions to gauge their motivations when you're onboarding them, so that you can specifically tailor your training to your specific demographic? Is that something that's being taken into consideration and a part of the recruitment and onboarding process?
That's a really great question, Alyssa. That is, I think, too often one thing that we do miss is understanding the why people are coming to our organization. Is it a free pass, or is it giving back to the community, or whatever that might be? So great question. Anyone out there want to speak to that? Or if you do that, or if you now are going to do that in the future? I'm going to pick on Sarah. Sorry, Sarah, at the YMCA Calgary. I know just having worked there for quite a few years, the volunteer pool is just gargantuan. What is the recruitment strategy for your volunteer pool? And generally speaking, why did those folks volunteer for the YMCA Calgary and continue to volunteer at the Y? Because I know there's people who have been there for years and years and years.
Sure. I'm a little bit removed from that part of it now, but so during the interview, I know one of the questions is, why do you want to volunteer here? And we get the gamut from, they're outright, the 14-year-olds want a free membership, because their friends come here, maybe their parents can't afford a membership. So after 3 months, we do give them a free membership. But then some of them, they do want to give back to the community. Some of them have a why story where the Y helped them with getting their confidence back, or help them learn English as a second language, or we do so many programs and services that it sort of runs the gamut, and they are so thankful and want to give back. So it does vary. Sometimes they're just retired and need to fill their day, but we do try to match their interest, their skill level, and their availability with what opportunities are available to them. And so many times we have even, we may not have a posting or a position necessarily for their skill set, but I have a meeting with a volunteer later this week who she just wants to help with Excel documents and making charts and translating data. And we don't really have a position for that, but that she passed all our training and our interviews and just seemed like a right fit. And so I'm going to meet with her, see if I can just help her out and create a little position for her, and a few of us maybe give her some of those tasks to sort of, it brightens her joy and it helps us along the way. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's sort of what we do.
No, I love that answer. And I love that you're working with that specific person with a very specific skill set to find a place for them. I think the YMCA does such a lovely job of really matching and making sure that people feel valued within their organization. So
yeah, exactly.
anyone else have successes or challenges with volunteer recruitment or staffing?
I guess one struggle because we do take volunteers as young as 14. Sometimes we have a 14-year-old. It's that intergenerational stuff as well, right? So in our basketball program, you can have a 14-year-old and a 70-year-old who are both the assigned volunteers for that particular class. So they come with different experiences and different motivations and different goals, but somehow it works. Like, you know, sometimes it's just not a good fit, and sometimes that's just, you know, personalities or availability or whatnot. But for a lot of times, yeah, you will see intergenerational volunteers working together, but it is a struggle to try to match the 14 to probably 20-year-olds. Sometimes it's hit and miss if they come and how they communicate, and how frequently they communicate and the ways they communicate. So we just try to do our best, like I said earlier, just to try to meet the needs of everyone involved, but and make it a positive experience. But yeah, sometimes it's that younger generation of just trying to fit them in properly, that it's still value to us and value to them for them to volunteer.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah, for sure. And I think there's value in having those partner or those pairings, like a young youth and an older person with different lived experiences, like you mentioned, and the sharing that happens and the learning between both of those people or individuals leading a program. I think that's so cool and something we don't do often enough, to be honest. I know when I worked at the city of Calgary, the majority of our volunteers were young. They started at 12, and then transition from volunteers into staff, a large chunk of them. But it would be really great to have, you know, some of those intergenerational opportunities for learning. So, Alyssa, hand up over there.
Yeah, I figured it's easier than me just shouting out. But I think so it doesn't seem, from what I'm sensing, is a lot of people are having issues with volunteer recruitment. But I'm curious how volunteer retention is going. So kind of going off of what Deanne just said, and with the younger generation, keeping them engaged. So our turnover rates for volunteers in kind of your organizations, and this is to the larger group, is that becoming a problem by any means?
Great question. Anyone want to speak to volunteer retention?
Yeah, I was mainly just curious what volunteer turnover was looking like in the community.
Got a couple people off mute here. So maybe Sylvia, I think you're off mute.
Yeah, just in regards to volunteer recruitment, even in the tri-region of Spruce Grove. So we are in a desperate state, really, for volunteers for the most part. With retention, it seems to depend on the age range, and as we were talking about with the youth staying, and even with you know, family members that are of working age groups staying on. Retention has definitely been a challenge, and we're just working through some strategies on how to do the intergenerational pieces and engage all those intergenerational groups together. But I know the sport associations that I talk to regularly, they're having a very difficult time trying to find volunteers, and part of it is the liability and susceptibility of being a volunteer, and people not wanting to take on that the burden of that, or the fear of it more so than the burden. And so we're just trying to work through all of that. So we're intrigued to hear what everyone else says.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
I was just going to add, I've heard sport organizations are struggling quite a bit right now. So I was curious kind of, how that was looking as well for other organizations. So it's some good insight. Thank you. So yeah.
Alyssa, a lot of our Calgary Adapted Hub programs rely on students. And so I think that there's been a lot of good conversation here today about finding out what's the motivation. And then I think really what I've seen as far as maybe, not touching on what the retention is, but being realistic. So most of our program partners would be able to increase the amount of participants that they would have. However, the risk is not having enough volunteers to provide that quality experience. And so they've left the numbers a little bit lower. But it's certainly something we're looking at as far as how do we, if the demand is there, how do we continue to meet the need in the community by making sure we do have the right ratios and whatnot, both at camp, programs, etc.
Right. And I think a lot of that, though, is going to come back to based on just some of the research I've done in the past is we kind of know from some previous literature that the quality experiences volunteers have with their experience in turn influences the quality experiences participants derive from the program. So I think it's also ensuring that, if we know the motivations, like training needs to be obviously not too burdensome, but it needs to be specific so that we're prepping individuals for their specific roles. That tends to be the hardest thing for organizations is typically volunteers are put on into a position kind of on the fly, on the job. And this can kind of create low confidence for some individuals, specifically say volunteers who have never worked with individuals with disabilities. It's great to know. I just spoke with a volunteer recently, and she was like, it was great to go over what communication disabilities or any kind of sensory disabilities, what those are. But then her first volunteer experience, she was placed with an individual that she didn't know how to appropriately communicate. So I think in some of the training, we're really missing that how-to portion. And I think that might be where organizations with their training might need to kind of lean in more so to provide those practical skills or certain scenarios, tabletop exercises, for example, and going through certain scenarios that can essentially enhance the program and the quality experiences for both the volunteer and the participant. And then really evaluating the volunteer's experience so that you have that feedback to improve kind of your training and your onboarding, your recruitment process moving forward. Again, it's not feasible all at once, and I completely understand that, especially given from a human resource perspective. But I think at least if this is in the back of your mind, for instance, and making kind of little advances throughout your volunteer and staff recruitment and training and things like that. Those are just some things to be mindful of.
Yeah, I completely agree, Alyssa. And I think you hit on, a lot of the, we're calling them hot topics today, so I'll call them that too. But the one specifically, and so I know a few of us have had this conversation that are on the call today, but is really around intellectual disabilities or those folks living with neurodiversities. And so quite often we have done accessibility plans and we've done some of those communication, maybe even, strategies for lifting or transitioning somebody using a mobility support. Some of those conversations have been had, but the staff and volunteers are asking for more. And when it's not met, it really is confidence that they talk about. And then if they're showing up without confidence, it does impact their experience. So I can start to see all of these ripples and impacts that we really want to start by building a quality experience for both of those, both the volunteer and participant, as you mentioned.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and I'll add to, I think Alyssa and Ashley bring up really great points. And I think the current learning opportunities are good. We're not quite hitting the nail on the head, as it were. But I think back to something you said, Alyssa, is those volunteer or staff, even staff training, they need to be accessible and really meet people where they're at in terms of whether they're online or virtual trainings or little snapshots or tabletop exercises that are meaningful instead of a 4-hour sit down certification. Again, back to the youth that we're potentially targeting or having in these programs, are they at a state of readiness where they can sit down and absorb 4 hours of content online? Probably not, unless it's a YouTube video that's constantly changing and giving you dopamine hits. And reality is that it's not. We want to make sure that it's one of those quality learning experiences. So thanks, Ashley. She's got a boogie here. And I know we're at 12:45. So before I wrap up with our little slide on our current or our future membership program, anyone else want to talk about any of the learning and development Jamboard statements on here? So lack of learning opportunities, we've kind of talked about, getting staff trained, potential of having too much training, because we love training and recreation and sport to the point we almost train people to death, or even the cost of those PD opportunities that are existing. Anyone seeing some successes and challenges within the scope of learning and development for both staff and volunteers? Obligatory 10-second hold. If you are interested in learning a little bit more around the learning and development opportunities that are existing, and sorry, Sylvia, you just mentioned time seems to be the biggest difficulty. I agree. Again, making sure that there's a readiness that fits the need for the actual person on the other end is really valuable. But Calgary Adapted Hub, we are working on some learning and development opportunities. If you are looking for more specifics that are outside of the Calgary Adapted Hub, feel free to contact us. There are some, not a ton, but or even if you come across any learning opportunities you'd like to share with us that we can share within our greater community, we'd be happy to kind of extend that. Because again, this is a collaborative community, and the more we share, the more we get out of it for our communities and our organizations. So just being mindful of time here, I'm just going to stop sharing this really quickly. Any last thoughts about any of the statements on the Jamboard before I switch over to this last Google slide? Okay. So just quickly, before we let you go, we are moving to membership. It's going to be free memberships for folks out in the community. We will have it starting January 2024. I can't believe 2024 already on the horizon. We'll have a professional membership really around folks with background and experience in disability and children and youth within our sector. So researchers, clinicians, social workers, and teachers. We'll have a community membership that really focuses on not-for-profit organizations, sport groups, PSOs, rec providers, those folks who are volunteers, like we talked about today, or staff who want to get a little bit more experience or have opportunities, learning opportunities shared with them. And then, of course, our families who are really the most important part, really getting ahead of training opportunities and recreation programming for those parents and guardians and children and youth living with disabilities. So that is coming down the pipes come January. So stay tuned for that. And thank you. Thanks for joining us for that quick 45 minutes on Hot Topics. Letitia, our knowledge and research coordinator, she puts on these amazing seminars once a month. This is the first one of this kind in terms of having give and go conversation, but we have some amazing speakers lined up from November onward, and we have a YouTube channel with all of our previous seminars where you can check out some speakers from all over the world talking about adaptive physical activity and sport. So if you scan our QR code there on the bottom right hand corner, it'll bring you to our website, and under our research tab you can find our YouTube channel and check any of those out. So thanks again for being here, sharing your lunch time with us. I know it's a precious time, so thanks. Letitia and I will stay on here till the last person leaves if you want to talk with us both, but have an awesome Tuesday. I was going to say Monday. Have an awesome Tuesday, and we'll see you again in November.
Thanks so much, everyone.